Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for another video from our channel talking about the real estate market and changes that are coming. And today we're going to talk about TRESA. TRESA is a new act and it's short for Trust in Real Estate Services Act. Now before we forget, click on the like button at the bottom, subscribe to our channel, and click on the notification button so that way if we have any new released videos you're gonna get a notification and you'll be able to follow us. So for those of you that don't know, currently there's an act that all real estate professionals have to comply to, and that's called REBBA. REBBA stands for Real Estate Business Broker Act, and this act is changing to the new TRESA Act, which I mentioned stands for Trust in Real Estate Services Act. There are several changes that are coming that will affect both consumers and real estate professionals, and we're going to try to dissect that and explain how and why this act is so important. The change is due to consumer complaints about concerns like I signed a BRA for one offer and I was stuck for 6 months working with a real estate professional, or the agent did not provide the services that they promised, or in a bidding war I felt like agent is lying to us and there isn't any other offers, or every single time the listing agent ends up winning in a bidding war. Issues with disclosure of or issues with forms was another problem that triggered this new act to be presented, and now it's going to become the act that we all have to follow. Now, TRESA was supposed to start on April 1st, 2023. But the problem was a lot of organizations that are involved in regulations in real estate industry, or basically boards that are the real estate professionals are registered with, they were not ready for this change. Therefore, it was delayed. Okay, government delayed this because they knew that in order to apply these new regulations, we needed a lot of new forms that have to be used by real estate professionals. Here are some major changes that are coming. Number one, you have to give up the new information guide to consumers before they decide to work with you. In other words, before they make a decision, this new consumer guide has to be provided to the clients. Now, we used to have customers, meaning that a real estate professional could provide a client service or customer service to someone that wanted to work with them. Obviously, with the customers, they had less protection and there was limited obligations from the real estate professional towards them. In other words, real estate professionals were not as much liable in regards to the actions that they were making. I'm not going to get into details of this because that's by itself is another video that we can basically talk about this for more than half an hour, what the differences are between customers and clients. But here comes the change. There will be no more customers with this new act. You can either be a client or you have to be self-represented. Now, also, the new change will allow designated agency. In the past, when you had two salespeople from the same brokerage representing two different clients, both of those clients were represented by the brokerage, not the individual agents. Now, this new act is going to allow the agent to have a client relationship with the consumer. That way, if you got two agents from the same brokerage, they each can have a separate agency agreement, and the clients are no longer in a multiple representation scenario because it's only the agent that's going to represent them, not the brokerage. And this is going to eliminate that multiple representation scenario, or being in a multiple representation when you have a buyer or seller, or you have two buyers that are putting an offer on a property. Now, disclosure of material fact now becomes the responsibility of the seller representative. Meaning that if they have knowledge about anything that's going to affect the property, they have to disclose it to the buyers that are bringing an offer. Also, this new act is going to give the ability to have open offers if the seller decides to. The seller decides that if they want to disclose the information and the offers to the buyers, or they want to have a closed bidding, or in other words, they don't disclose any information. Now, keep in mind that the sellers can change their mind at any point throughout the process, meaning that initially they can decide to have a closed bid, and then in the middle of the negotiation, they can decide that they want to disclose that information. So it is important that the buyers have this understanding that the information can be disclosed by the seller to the other people that are bringing an offer for that property. Another change that's coming is the new discipline process for real estate professionals. Because based on the new changes, I think all the penalties have been increased, and if professionals in this industry make a mistake, they are probably going to be penalized with a higher penalties. This change also will require more than 90 new forms to be used by real estate professionals to be able to apply all these changes and make sure that they are complying with the regulation. Now, the process of working with a new client is going to be the following. First, the real estate professional has to ask them if they work with another agent. The second step is going to be to provide them with the information document and explain that information document, as well as working with a realtor. Then they have to explain all the benefits of being a client and working with a real estate professional. They have to explain that if the client decides to be self-represented, nothing is confidential. Also, prospects must receive information documents and working with a realtor in advance of the service being provided. And they have to make a choice. If they decide to be self-represented, you cannot show them other homes that the brokerage does not have a listing. Meaning that you can't go to an open house and basically ask the person at the open house to show you other properties in the area. They can only show you the properties that the brokerage has a listing, and they have a contract with that brokerage. For self-represented individuals, you also have to get them to sign an additional form to understand the risks that are involved in being self-represented. If they refuse to sign the document, you have to provide them with a copy, and you also have to follow it up with an email with a copy of the document. Also, content of the email should say that you already explained this information to them. Now, there are some additional changes as well. The agreement with the client should show details of the service provided to them. For example, if you have a listing agreement, you should mention what type of services you're going to provide with this listing agreement. For example, are you going to do any open houses? Is there going to be any staging? Is there going to be a video? Are you going to put a sign on the lawn? All of those details have to be indicated in the listing agreement. And same thing with the buyers. What kind of services you're going to provide with the buyers. Now, also, these new forms are going to allow us to charge different commissions for agreement, whether if the person is a client or self-represented. So let's assume you're a listing agent and someone signs a contract with you as a client. You will charge a different commission for this person than someone that's self-represented. Now, it doesn't say anything about which one you're going to charge more or less, but we can say that chances are that for self-represented individuals, there might be a lower commission. Now, additional clarifications that I think is very important to understand. When you're signing a contract, there has to be more explanation about expiry date. The expiry date has to be initialed by the consumer. You gotta explain more about holdover clause and how does it affect the consumer. You gotta explain about the claim to RICO against an agent. So if anything goes wrong, how do they make that claim? Obviously, the consumer is encouraged to resolve the problem by reaching out to the broker of record of the company. You cannot provide certain services to the individuals that are self-represented. And I'm going to go through some of these services with you so you understand what we can't do. Number one, you can't provide your opinion or advice. You cannot show any properties, as I mentioned earlier, that you don't have a listing for. You cannot provide information about the listing unless your brokerage has a listing agreement for that property. And if self-represented buyer and self-represented seller want to work with you, you cannot provide any assistance. In other words, you can't work with them. You have to have a contract with one or the other, either a buyer or a seller. So if two individuals that are self-represented reach out to you and they ask for your help, you can't help them. Now, in terms of additional changes, we're going to talk about a few other points that are important. You all know about mere posting. Mere postings used to be that you signed a contract as a customer with the owner of the property and you put the property on MLS. That is no longer allowed. You still have to sign a client agreement, but you indicate what type of service you provide, and the service is going to be just to list the property on MLS. Buyers can sign a limited agreement to show either a limited amount of properties or specific properties. That agreement can be for a duration of a day, and you can have a holdover period for a longer period of time, and that holdover period will apply if they decide to buy one of those properties that you've shown to them. In that contract, it can say that any property that you show to them, you'll get a commission and you're entitled to receive that commission. Once again, you cannot show them other brokerage listings if agreement is not signed. Listing agent must disclose everything to seller legally and make sure that they put that in writing, and they have to disclose material facts like major hidden defects that make a home uninhabitable or dangerous or affects the buyer's enjoyment of the property. Murder, suicide is not required to be disclosed. So whether it's a murder or suicide, you don't have to disclose it. So if it's important to your buyer, you should put a clause in the agreement of purchase and sale indicating that they have to disclose this information to you. Now, in regards to the bidding and what we talked about, the open bidding, changes to the bidding wars are coming, and there are major changes. But the main important point is the open bidding that we discussed earlier. You can direct that the highest price and other detailed information about that offer be disclosed to all the other bidders. You can include deposit amount, closing day, whether they have a condition or not, and that information would become available to all the other bidders on the property. Now, the seller can decide, as I mentioned earlier, to disclose the information, but in the middle of the negotiation, they can change their mind. But they cannot provide the identity of the buyers to others. Also, You have to provide the number of offers that are received, and you have to make sure that this is done in writing, so everyone that is participating in the bidding war, they know exactly how many offers are on the table. Buyers must understand that when they make an offer, this offer may or may not be disclosed by the seller to other buyers that are bringing an offer. Now, if the buyer does not want their information to be disclosed, there might be a solution by putting a clause in the agreement that if the seller decides to disclose this information, then they're withdrawing their offer. Okay. Other changes are discipline process that we discussed earlier, but I'm going to get into some more detail. Now, if there is a complaint against a real estate professional, now we have a panel that is going to be comprised of 5 people, and one of them is not going to be a realtor. So it's going to be a member of public. Person who complains gets a copy of the final decision, and it's published on RECO's website for a period of 5 years. Registrant can be suspended or their license can be revoked, meaning that if they do something drastic, they can lose their registration. Fines are higher, I mentioned that earlier, and now it's up to $50,000 for an individual or a salesperson, and $100,000 for a brokerage. And the appeal now is to licensed appeal tribunal, and it is going to be very difficult to win an appeal. Now, RECO inspectors also have the right to attend the premises without a warrant or court order, and they can basically come to the property where you keep your records, and they can bring an expert or an accountant and make sure that they go through the records, and they can demand to see your records right there and then. Okay? Just to make sure that there are no problems with your books. Another change that's coming is now the salespeople are going to be able to have designations. For example, a commercial expert, a condo expert, and there might be a lot of other designations that are coming. So, in order to get those designations, there are probably going to be some courses that they have to take, and then they can use that designation. Another change that right now they're talking about, and it has not been implemented yet, might be a cooling off period for any type of agreement. This is not going to be really beneficial for our industry, so we're trying to fight this change, and this will allow the buyer to cancel an agreement of purchase and sale within 3 business days from the time that they sign, and they will only pay a small penalty if they decide to do that, which is 0.25% of the purchase price. Now keep in mind, this is going to open up a whole can of worms, because even though you think you sold your property, the buyer can come back and change their mind and cancel the deal. There's also going to be a lot of different type of abuses in the industry that can result from this change. So it's good to know that this is the next phase, and chances are if people in the industry have a say in it, they're probably going to try to stop it from happening. Now, there is one more item on the list that we should be talking about, and that's regulations of auctioneers selling real estate. Because currently, auctioneers do not need a license in real estate in order to sell real estate. The change is coming to make sure that they are registered with the real estate industry before they can auction a home. And obviously, with the new act, there's going to be a requirement of more education, and getting into the real estate might become a little bit more difficult by introducing new courses and new education program that is gonna make sure that people have the knowledge and expertise to help the consumers with their needs. Okay, so that's a lot of changes that are coming, and although we were really serious, but we look at this as a fun part of real estate profession, and we think that these changes, as long as it's implemented properly, it's going to protect the consumers and make sure that consumers have a better service from real estate industry. Once again, if you like this video, click on the like button, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you click on the notification button. That way you're updated with all the new videos that we're releasing on this channel. If you are interested to buy or sell a property, you can contact us and use one of the Homila Realty's professional salespeople that are educated and they keep up to date with all the changes in real estate market and real estate industry. Okay, have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.